All right. Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back to another Future Focus weekly update where hopefully I am helping keeping you ahead, 10 steps ahead at the intersection of business, tech, and the human experience. I hope you have had a wonderful week. Just as a heads up, this is the most likely, unless something changes, we'll see. But I am planning on digitally detoxing for the next couple weeks. So I will not be recording an episode for the next 2 weeks. So you'll just have to hold out and take a digital respite, I guess, if you will. But who knows? Sometimes I have some time and then I end up doing it. So don't hold me to it too tightly, but most likely you won't be hearing from me for a couple weeks. And for those of you who have watched, first of all, thank you so much to everybody who's watched and supported this in 2024. I just got my YouTube stats and my Spotify stats and a bunch of other stats that came in. And it's been a pretty awesome year, considering how much I've pivoted everything in 2024. So clearly, at least based on the feedback and the metrics, the new direction of things is a positive one. So hopefully you're enjoying it, finding value. And yeah, if not, then the data lies. So I don't know. But anyway, and if you could, as before you go out and celebrate the holidays, please share this with a friend, someone you know, somebody who'd benefit from it. Leave a like, review, rating, all that good stuff. And one final subtle plug, and then I will jump to it. I just launched my website, so christopherlind.co, as I get ready for 2025 and stepping into the new year under my own shingle. So that'll be a big year with that. I promise I'm not going to load my podcast with lots of plugs about that. It'll be the same stuff, but wanted to at least give you a heads up on that. So feel free to check it out and share it with someone who might benefit from it, or let me know if you could use some help. Okay, so let's get into it. I've got quite a rundown this week. Like usual, I will kind of be chuckling throughout on some of these things and connecting the dots between some other ones. They also relate to some of the things I talked about last week, but let's jump straight into it. If you want to consider 2 minutes and 47 seconds in straight into it. But anyway, so I know sometimes the whole return to office thing is just like, oh, come on already. Why are we still talking about this? But two of them hit this week that just made me laugh, that I was like, I've got to bring this back up again. And some of it, I won't just continue repeating myself. But if you haven't been following what's been going on with Amazon, if you're new or even if it's just been a little bit, Amazon was one of the big ones who, despite their employees literally protesting and rioting in the streets over this, they're like, by dadgummit, you're going to come into the office 5 days a week, no matter what. And I have a lot of friends over there, and it has been interesting talking to them from folks on the inside, because people are not happy about it. I mean, they're just not happy, which is not surprising. No adult likes to be told what to do, specifically when they've demonstrated they don't actually need to do it that way. So what's been interesting is they have been determined. Now, they ran into a little bit of a hiccup because, wouldn't you know, there are legal reasons you can't just force people to do this. And so in I don't know, it was a month ago or something like this, they ran into a few hiccups because it was like, well, what about people with disabilities? And they kind of ran into this like, we didn't think about that. But now they've come into a really big issue in that this is all over the news. But they ordered everybody back into the office. Everybody, you have to be here 5 days a week. And so in good stewardship, the employees start doing it. And all of a sudden they're like, wait. Hang on a second, everybody. Slow down here. We don't have any room for you. So here they tell everybody, you got to come into the office. People start coming into the office and they're like, oh, crap. We don't have office space. We don't have room for all these people who just showed up. How did we miss this one? And so this is causing major issues because now they're having to, and of course, and this is the part that just makes me put my head in my hands. Of course, nobody wants to go, we've made a cosmic mistake. I am sorry. We jumped the gun on this. We maybe should have put a little more thought into our plans instead of just saying jump and then we'll figure it out later. No. We're not going to acknowledge that. We're just going to try and come up with some corporate legalese mumbo jumbo to try and make it seem like this was all part of the plan. And it's pretty entertaining to read some of the things that, like, some of the statements being put out by their PR teams, and talking to some of the people over at Amazon that I know and being like, yeah, so how's this landing with the employees, where it's like, oh, we need to do some additional work. We're delaying our plans slightly as we work through some, I mean, and again, it's all the corporate mumbo jumbo that you'll see with this. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in 2025, because this is one of those instances where it's just like, it doesn't have to be this hard. I don't know why, when I am involved in advisory projects, sometimes when I'm involved in things, so I run into some of this stuff where I'm going, we do not need to make this as hard as we need to be. But oftentimes our inability to say, you know what, had we thought this through first, we wouldn't be here. And you know what, we didn't think it through. And so now here we are. Maybe instead of trying to make sure we don't acknowledge we made a mistake, we just own up to the fact that, you know what, change in plans. Upon further consideration, we realized and there's a way to any of the, if some of the Amazon execs happen to hear this by chance, there is a way that you can do this gracefully. And even though you're admitting that you made a mistake, you can come out looking like the hero in all of this. So I get, especially as senior leaders, and this is where the more empathetic side of me comes together, I get that there can be enormous pressure to seem like you've got it all figured out. And it can be embarrassing, and probably for Amazon, especially because it's been such a big public spectacle of what you've been doing. And now to have to go, oops. But you're not fooling anyone. And if anything, you're doing more damage to your brand, to your employee engagement, to even your own like self-respect by sitting here pretending like none of this is happening. If anybody follows some of the YouTube verse, you know, there's some big YouTubers, Logan Paul and KSI and all this stuff, and Mr. Beast even, right? They're in the same situation where it's like, everybody knows you made a giant mistake. You're not fooling anybody. But there's almost just this refusal to take any responsibility for making a mistake, which we make mistakes. We move too fast. We do stupid stuff and then realize, wow, I guess we didn't think that through. But this whole, well, we can't admit that. We can't tell anybody that's what happened. We got to come up with some sort of plan to make it look like this cosmic mess up was all part of the plan. It doesn't help. It makes everything worse. And so maybe you're not at Amazon, but maybe you're at another company, or maybe you've done similar things, which, by the way, just today, AT&T, I really don't understand it. I really don't understand it. AT&T came out today and said next month, January, they're going big on their RTO. So if you're at AT&T and you haven't heard the news yet, if you've been under a rock, like, guess what? 5 days a week, everybody's coming back and it's mandatory. And even when questioned, have you thought through this? Are you going to potentially run into some of the snags Amazon had? Do you have room for every single employee who works for you to be in the office? They kind of dodged it. Well, we're thinking through all this stuff. And it's like, you're thinking through all these plans with 2 weeks left in the year. And those 2 weeks are the biggest, busiest holiday seasons of the year. So even if your plan is to think this through, you're literally going to destroy people's holidays to try. I just don't. Sometimes this stuff just makes me shake my head and put my head in my hands and go, what on earth are we doing here? And by the way, for those who may not have followed me for a very long time, I'm not sitting here saying everybody should be remote. That's how it should be. There's no reason anybody should ever work in an office. That's not what I'm saying. I completely understand why some people just prefer it. I understand. If you listened to my thing last week, one of the things I said I most appreciated, or 2 weeks ago, about Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, is he admits it's more of a preference for me. The data says otherwise, but I just can't get past that. Like, Great. So then work with that and work around it instead of the shenanigans that's happening with Amazon right now. Is you're like, we're going forward with this. Oops, we ran into legal trouble. Oops, we don't even have the physical space to do this. I mean, I would not be surprised. Just we'll see what happens in 2025. But I would not be surprised if Amazon spends millions of dollars building new offices just to put people in them who don't want to be there. And it's madness. It's truly madness that I cannot wrap my head around. And then I watch other companies who are following suit. It's like they're watching the lemmings walk off the cliff and they go, we're up next. You sure you don't want to think about this? You sure you don't want to walk another path here? I mean, there's other ways you can go. It's not over the cliff or disaster. I mean, there's alternatives, and I'm just not seeing it right now. And these whole power plays that come into play right now, they are not doing good things for companies. And as somebody, as I said, I talk to a lot of people over at Amazon at a number of different levels. It's killing you on the inside. And I know someone who's doing some consulting work right now. This is just, and maybe it's just because I talk to too many people and I know too many people and people are comfortable sharing stuff with me. And so I see some things, but there's literally efforts going on at Amazon because Amazon's going, boy, people are really angry right now and they really don't want to come into the office. So how do we make them want to come into the office? And how do we build a culture where people are excited about this thing instead of being unhappy with it? And I just go, are you serious right now? Like, you are spending how much money on trying to come up with a plan to make people fundamentally think and believe different things about their reality than is even, I don't get it. I don't get it. And there is a better way. And if you listen to this, if any takeaway to anybody, there's one takeaway you have is, there are more options. There are more possibilities. There are better ways to do this than to jump on these all or nothing bandwagons and then just hold tight. It's like watching the Titanic just go down and seeing people sitting on the ship going, nah, we're good. I'm pretty sure that the two pieces are going to come back together and we'll be fine. And you're sitting on a rowboat going, I don't think you're going to be okay. And, you know, I'm not stupid in that is Amazon going to go away because they can't figure out the RTO thing? No. But I can tell you this is going to have major cost to them. And even if they manage to succeed with their culture initiative and somehow brainwash or terminate everybody who doesn't buy into the Kool-Aid and only hire people who buy into the Kool-Aid, you will create an environment that is so toxic and unhealthy that you'll rot from the inside. And that's just what makes me sad when I see some of this stuff is I'll even see companies go, we did it. See, we succeeded. And I'm like, what's your definition of success? Because what I'm seeing, it's going to destroy you in the end. But if that's really what success looks like, then I guess go get it. So Amazon's running into issues. AT&T's following suit. I have a sneaking suspicion you're going to do it. And I guess the other thing is, here's yet another example of why it's so important to think ahead, take the time to go slow so you can go fast, so you don't end up in a situation where you're wearing egg on your face. Because had Amazon taken the time to really even just do some basic workforce planning, how many employees do we have? How many cubicles and offices do we have? What is the fire safety limit on how many people can be in the building? Oh no, that number is smaller than the number of employees we have. Maybe we want to slow the roll on this thing. It's just, this stuff's avoidable, but there's so much pressure to just go and figure it out. So anyway, I got a good laugh out of that one, and we'll see what happens next year. All right, moving on. This ties to an article I came across on Forbes. which also relates to several advisory board meetings that I've been in this week. And so the article by Forbes was overall, I support it. It was an article about, how senior leaders should use LLMs on a day-to-day basis. And in general, the tips were pretty generic. There wasn't anything really all that transformational in the article, but it just had some basic tips for, I get it. If you're new to LLMs and you're a senior leader who's maybe slower to adopt tech, you may be going like, so what do I do with this? And it had some good suggestions, like, take your information and transform it into something visual, or try and take big clumps of information and distill it down. But then it had some ones that I was a little like another really basic one it had that I was like, yeah, I mean, fine. Like voice memo transcription. Sure. Honestly, transcription is more powerful than I think anybody realizes. That is incredible to be able to take a meeting, a dialogue, or whatever, and have it in text form that can then be processed and worked with, and you can see who said what and all this stuff. So those kinds of things, fantastic. The ones where I kind of went, oh, and even those two, I'm kind of like, ooh, this is where we need to have more guidance on this stuff. And it's not where I'm going to get into it. It's not limited to just senior leaders, but it's related to these because these are some of the problems that I'm seeing. Because then it said things like, well, use it for collaborative brainstorming. Use it for managing tough conversations with stakeholders. And I started getting into these and I go, oh, this is where on the surface, the advice isn't bad. Because as an example, for collaborative brainstorming, I love using generative AI. I love bouncing ideas around. If I think up something, I'll throw it in there and I'll pressure test it and go, help me. What am I not thinking about? What else could I be thinking about? Help me think through these decisions. That's great. Even the voice transcriptions. I love taking meetings I've been in, or even these podcasts, and getting the transcript and then throwing it in ChatGPT and then asking and nudging it and mining out of it some of the really insightful things that have come up. I mean, those, fine. Where I see concerns with some of this is in the execution of it. And it came up at multiple advisory board meetings. One was with a bunch of IT companies, and then another one was with a bunch of HR execs. And we were talking through the future for 2025. And everybody was talking similar to this. Well, this is what AI is good for. Use it for this. It's great for this, and all these other things. And I picked up on something that's coming out in the data that is very concerning to me. Because as we were running through on one of these meetings, the data points of where people are using generative AI, there were some themes. And the group kind of looked at me and said, Christopher, do you agree? Like, do you think these are the right things? And I said, yes. Just like with this Forbes article, I would say, yes, I agree these are good use cases for them. However, I have some very, very, very serious concerns with how people are going about it. And I'll give a really practical example to this. So in this HR one of the big areas that HR execs are planning on or looking for AI to help them in 2025 and beyond is in analytics, to help them, make sense of all the data they have and do all this other stuff. And my feedback was, here's my concern. When I work with HR leaders and just business leaders in general around AI and analytics, oftentimes analytics is an area they are not comfortable with. And so they're looking for AI to solve it for them instead of be a partner in working through it and helping kind of fill some of their gaps, but then also help push them to go further. They're almost looking for it to be a substitute rather than a thought partner. And I said, that is extremely, extremely dangerous. And one of the use cases that we talked through on this was succession planning. And one of the things that came up was a lot of companies are using AI to help with succession planning because it can look through countless amounts of data that companies hold and help identify who are the right people to be chosen for selection and succession and all this stuff. And if you're not familiar with succession planning, I won't get into all the details, but in short, it's basically companies put lots of time and effort into figuring out who takes the place of leaders Should something happen to them? Should they move on? Should the company promote them or move them into other roles? So instead of having a gap, they, can backfill. And so one of the things is everybody's like, yeah, we should use AI because it can help identify this. And even to the group, I said, I was in a conversation recently where this happened. And when I brought up the question, what criteria did AI use for this? The room was just silent. And the response was, well, AI figured that out. And I went, oh, for Pete's sakes, like this is where we are going to go completely off the rails. Because what had happened in this instance was the organization had trusted the LLMs to look at the data and make decisions based on what it knew, and then just recommend who should be the successors. And then all the company was doing was validating, do they agree? But the problem with this is they didn't really know, well, what criteria were being used? And did we push back on this? Did we even train the AI on the values and the specific things that we want to be using and weighting certain things? They allowed it to just identify who it thought made the most sense. And when I started digging into how it came to these decisions, I was like, these are actually terrible criteria. So here we are choosing these people based on decisions made by AI, and then we're just doing the final. And this is where I get really nervous when people say, oh, well, we're keeping humans in the loop. And I'm like, which loops? Because if you've got them in the wrong loops, this is going to completely destroy you from the inside, and you won't even know it. Because just like this example where all of a sudden it was like, hey, look, we've got our whole list of successors. And you're like, now we have humans in the loop, see? Because now we have humans discussing who this was. It's like, yeah, but you had no humans in the loop in getting to this point. So what good? You just missed all of it. And so as I was reading this Forbes article, I was thinking through the same thing. I'm like, okay, like managing tough conversations with stakeholders. Sure, can you get some feedback or think through, hey, what are some perspectives I'm not considering and all this kind of stuff. But if you're looking to delegate difficult conversations to AI and say, AI, can you just do this for me? Or just tell me what to say and I'll just be a parrot and repeat it. This is not going to go well. AI is an alien intelligence. It does not think, contextualize, understand, make decisions like we do. And so the decisions it makes, the way it comes to these conclusions are not in our best interest all the time. And, I think of even the collaborative brainstorming that Forbes said. I mean, I love using AI to help collaborative brainstorm, but I am very much integrated in that process. And I am very much also intentional about including other people with that and going, hey, like, what do we think? Like other thoughts. What is AI not? It's just another thought partner in the room. It is not a replacement. And the concern I'm seeing with this, whether you're a senior leader, a mid-level leader, you're an individual, like it doesn't matter, is we just as humans have this terrible tendency of going, I don't like doing something, so how do I get out of it? And right now, I'm seeing a lot of people taking the things they don't like doing or aren't very good at or just would prefer to avoid and saying, well, hey, AI is proving it can do it pretty well. Let's just let it do it. And that is not it. So just be really careful with this because like I said, I see so many articles. I'm in so many discussions and the nuance of this is so dangerous because even people might hear me and go, well, I've heard you say it's good for that. And I'm like, yes, if you're using it the right way. If you're not, this will come back to bite you in ways you just are not even going to see coming. And so just please be really, really thoughtful and careful with this. And don't just think, I think that's a warning indicator light. If you're turning to AI because you go, I don't like this. And your goal isn't to go, I don't like this, but how can it make me better at it? And how can it help me actually lean in and participate in this? That's a big red boop, 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 boop. Like that's a warning light that you're probably not using AI appropriately. And if you need help with it, get help. call me, like whatever, but just, gosh, I see some of this stuff and I'm like, oh boy. Now that ties to my next one. All right, so moving on, there was an interview that I watched and read with this CEO from a company called Klarna. It's out in Sweden, I think. Very much sounds like a Swedish Klarna. You know, it's very Swedish. But it was a CEO who said that, you know, hey, for the last year, I'm not replacing my human employees. I'm just using AI to fill in all the gaps. And I read the article, and I'll talk about this because I think there's more to it than this, but it's interesting because similarly in San Francisco, there is this whole ad campaign that is taking some major heat right now. I mean, major heat for this. And I think I've got it here. Let me pull up the thing. The company is called, it's a startup company. Oh, Artisan. And if you're out in San Francisco, you may have seen these things. The company's called Artisan, and they're putting up a bunch of ads out there that's like, the era of AI employees is here. Stop hiring humans, you know, use agents. And then it has a bunch of these like, AI doesn't need work-life balance. You know, so it's this very in your face middle finger to humans and saying you don't need them. And so and this is a growing trend. I'm just saying this is a growing trend that I don't think should be. Well, there's nuance to my response to this. So some people, you might not like my response to this, but even Sam Altman, I saw an interview with him recently where he's like, we need to be hiring more AI. Like this is the future. And the CFO is going down this path of like, hey, AI is capable of PhD level intelligence. And so we are, you know, not backfilling positions. We're filling positions with agents and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I understand OpenAI doing some of that. They're a freaking AI company. If they're not doing it, they're not drinking their own Kool-Aid. But this trend goes back to my previous point of we are just making some really, really foolish decisions with this. And again, it's a misunderstanding. I just think it's a misunderstanding of what are we actually trying to do? What do we actually need people to do? And honestly, also just a gross misunderstanding of the tech and its capabilities and its limitations. And so I fully anticipate as we come into 2025, this is going to be the push. A gentle AI is a big thing. So I'm going to pause there and focus on why I don't think it's all bad. Okay. So this might be the more controversial part of it. I don't know. It depends on who you are. I guess if you're a big, you know, get rid of the humans and hire AI, then go for it. There are absolutely certain things, and having worked in many companies and worked with many companies over the years, where I go, why do we have a person doing this job? You know, I think of the movie Office Space, where the crazy guy with the stapler, where it's like, what would you say you do here? And this is true in a lot of companies where there is literally just waste all over the place. And I know if you're an employee or if you're displaced or whatever, that can be really scary to hear. Companies might do some hard work to figure out, do we really need people doing this work? And maybe we don't. And there are legitimate areas where you have people doing things that you really don't need people doing. And, you know, that's where when I read the CEO interview with Klarna, I actually didn't agree. I actually agreed with much of his perspective. You know, here's a perfect example. I'm setting up my own practice. I'm doing some of these things. My first move is not to hire a bunch of employees. My first move is to maximize AI to help me accomplish things that I only have limited capacity to do. And then as I'm identifying things where I go, I really need a human to do this, or I really would value and the lift will be most beneficial from a human, that's where I'm going to either, you know, augment it with contractors at some point, get employees, you know, all this, but I'm going to be very thoughtful about it. And I will say the Klarna CEO, I think that's more the approach he's taking. Some of it was a little bit, you know, I get it. It's a clickbaity headline. I'm not hiring employees anymore. And it's when you actually get into the interview, it's like, that's not really what he's saying. He's saying He's being much more thoughtful, intentional, maybe a little further than I would go with it. But this can be a really good thing. And it can, to the employees who hear this and freak out, this actually can provide a more stable work environment. Because part of the reason, not all, but part of the reason we see layoffs left and right is companies go through these cycles where they just throw people at problems without a whole lot of thought. And people are very expensive and they're a lot of work. And then all of a sudden companies go, we didn't quite get the lift we thought. And we just hired you know what, I guess maybe we need to get rid of some of those people. And it results in layoffs. Now, granted, could this be avoided? Absolutely. Absolutely. But wouldn't you rather have companies maybe throwing things at AI and having to cut back on AI rather than somebody I talked to who just got a job, started, and 2 weeks later got laid off? I mean, that's a pretty terrible experience and it destroys the person. So do I see opportunity for this to be a positive? I do. I actually do. I don't appreciate this whole forget humans, let's just move on from them as though there's somehow a subcategory of employees. And that mindset, that mentality is just destructive. But the other thing about it, and this is where when I was looking at some of the artisan ads, I'm like, this isn't even accurate. It paints this picture of like, oh, employees need work-life balance and they need this and that. AI doesn't. And I just went, you don't know AI if you think that. Now, granted, might it need work-life balance in the way that people do? Well, no. But do people have to check in on what it's doing so it doesn't destroy things? If you watched my one last week, AI is nefarious. Who's checking that? I did it months ago. Robots were self-terminating. I mean, this idea that AI is somehow the perfect version of everything we want in humans with none of the bad, that's what I didn't like about the artisan ads. I get they're trying to be clickbaity. And the worst part is the CEO's like, well, it's working. Our sales are up. And I'm like, well, of course it is. Duh. But you're going to be on the hook when companies go, hey, we don't need humans. And that's where some of these tech firms aren't thinking this through, because when companies hire a bunch of people and then it doesn't work and they lay them off, they, use political, corporate jargon and, the innovation and strategy, or they gaslight the employees and go, well, it's really kind of your fault. You weren't performing. What these tech companies don't do is making these promises that, hey, just get rid of your people and use our agents. Like, who do you think these companies are going to blame when it goes south? Which it will. I've worked with vendors long enough to know that when things go wrong with vendors, companies don't go, you know what? This was really on us. We didn't think this through. And vendor, I know you did your best and you really tried to warn us about this and we didn't listen and we said, shut up and just do what we want. And now that's not going so well for us. And we need to take full responsibility. That's not how it happens. I'm telling you right now, that's not how it happens. You will be the first one to get thrown under the bus when things go sideways. And so that's where, to the CEO of Artisan who's like, haha, look at our sales go up and all this stuff. Yeah, you might experience some exponential growth that implodes in on itself. And you might go, maybe we shouldn't have made promises that we couldn't possibly deliver on. Maybe we should have thought this through a little bit. Goes back to my very first one. Good grief, companies. It doesn't have to be this difficult. You don't need to make these messes for yourselves. And yet we keep doing it over and over and over and over. So we'll see what happens, but I fully anticipate in 2025, we're going to hear a lot more about agental AI and lots more promises about, don't hire humans, hire people. And are there specific times where, yes, after a thoughtful analysis and understanding and critical way, you do it, you may decide that. But I think what you'll find is you will likely be hiring just as many humans, but for different things or repurposing them in different ways. And the reality is, I don't know a single company that goes, we have all the talent we need. So as an encouragement to the employees, I get it's hard right now. I mean, I was displaced this year, so I get it. And I talked to a lot of people who are like feeling hopeless because they're just like, oh, I can't even get a call back on stuff. So I get it, but that's not the way it's going to go. And there's not enough people to fill the jobs that we have. So hang in there. Now to the employees. All right, here's one. Somebody sent this to me and I was like, oh, for Pete's sake. Now this is to the employees. So there's a company called pickle.ai. All right. You can get your AI meeting clone for the low price of like $25 a month. Stop showing up to meetings. Send your clone. Fool your friends. Fool your coworkers. They'll think you're there. You don't even have to go anymore. Send your AI to the meeting and let it do the work. And I looked at this website and dug through some of this stuff and I went, good grief. I mean, I get companies are buying into some of this hype and they're going to make some really stupid decisions. People, please do not make this stupid decision. Do not go out and spend $24, $48, or $96 a month and go, this is great. I'm going to have AI go to my meetings for me. Think of all the time I'll save. I won't even have to show up anymore and I can deceive people. I can make them think it's me, but it won't. I even get 10 customized outfits. Oh, why? But this is a big thing. And this is actually, I was on a call the other day and jokingly mentioned this. And somebody goes, hang on a minute. There's a couple people I think I work with. I think they might be doing this now because I've noticed that in meetings, they are not acting themselves. And then when I bump into them, I'll mention something and it's as though they have no idea what I'm talking about. And this goes back to what I said with the senior tips for leaders. If you think AI is going to prevent you from having to do things you don't want, that is a big awooga, boop, boop, like warning sign. Don't do it. If you are in meetings that are adding so little value and that are so pointless that you can send an AI clone, nobody will even know that they're there. You don't even have to participate. Good grief. Ask for the meeting notes. This will come back to bite you. And I will promise you 100%, if you buy the hype on this and you go, this is awesome, I'm going to send AI meeting clones to meetings because there's not enough hours in the day. You're right. There isn't, which means you have to make the hard decision of pushing back, maybe declining certain meetings, maybe challenging the people who are scheduling the meetings going, what are we really trying to accomplish? And do I need to be here? But we have this tendency to go, ooh, yeah, I don't like that. That makes me feel a little uncomfortable. I could just sign up for the subscription and send my AI clone. Then I can avoid having that conversation. I don't have to actually dig into the difficult interpersonal relational side of things. I'll just send my clone and get the transcript afterwards. Like, don't do that, because I can tell you from this meeting I was in where the person suspects and is going to look into now these people who they believe they are just AI clones that they've started delegating things to. Those people are probably likely going to be out of a job if they pull this off, if they get caught, if that's really what they're doing. And if nothing else, if that turns out to be true, they have destroyed all trust with this person. And it's not going to take long before it spreads like wildfire that, yeah, if you're in a meeting with so-and-so, it's not even them. And people are going to call you out. It's going to, they're going to embarrass your clone, but it's going to be you. And then you're going to be responsible. That's the thing. You can't relegate your personhood. You can't do it. So you will be held accountable. You will be the one that this all blows back on. And when your clone does something stupid or says something stupid or goes in a different direction or makes a recommendation or whatever, and people go, well, you did it. And you go, well, first of all, then you're going to be like Amazon with the RTO thing going, I got to come up with some political jargon to say about how, no, that wasn't, I had a rough day that day and maybe I hadn't completely articulated. Give me a break. You're going to get caught red-handed. And when you do, it's going to blow up in your face. And further, it's not just about you. there are already lots of senior leaders who part of the reason this RTO, words I don't want to have come out of nonsense, part of their justification for it is they believe that everybody who's coming to meetings now is just showing up with their AI clone. They're not even there. They're on a beach, going on vacation, just sending their agent, which is so ironic that it's like, and you care about this as you're choosing to hire AI agents instead of people. What a hypocrite. But anyway, this contributes to the attitude and the negative stereotypes of employees are disengaged. They don't really participate. They aren't really there. They're just checking a box and not engaging in things. And it's like, what, do you want to be part of that problem? Do you want to be contributing to that stereotype? Do you want to be part of the reason why your company enforces a 5-day in the office RTO policy? Because they went, we had this exponential rise of our employees using pickle AI. And the only way we really feel comfortable now is we're going to force them to sit in an office, and we're going to actually do a biometric screening of them as they come into the building to make sure it's not, real botics. That's the one I talked about last week. It's not a real botics robot that you dressed up to look like. I mean, this is insanity that we're moving into. And companies like this frustrate me because we're trying to solve a symptom instead of a problem. And that's my biggest issue with things like Pickle AI is if you got stupid, pointless meetings, address the stupid, pointless meetings. Don't create AI agents to go to your stupid, pointless meetings to create more artificially generated nonsense and noise that ultimately you're going to have to deal with at some point that might get you fired, that might get the company moving in a wrong direction, that might create a bunch of data that then is further training the AI agents that are making decisions elsewhere. I mean, the thing is just the snake eating its own tail. Instead of going, meetings should be for a purpose. The only people who should be in meetings are people that need to be there and actively will contribute to this meeting. If we just do this, we don't need stupid AI clones. If we just go, there's only so much that we need to get accomplished, maybe we slow down a little bit and be intentional and thoughtful. Some of these problems would go away. But sorry, I'm a little frustrated when I saw this one because especially because I had the experience this week where the person literally went, I think I know multiple people who are either using this or something else. And now I'm going to look into this. So anyway, please don't. You're just adding to the problem if you do. And if you disagree with me, you go, no, Christopher, I've got a perfect excuse for this. Okay. I'm open to hearing it. I'll maybe set up a little card table with a sign that says, sending an AI agent in your place is dumb. Change my mind. All right. Final and last one before I wrap it up is the last one I saw was an article talking about the beginning of AI is autonomous AI. That's what's next. We had generative AI and LLMs. Now we're moving into autonomous AI. Now, granted, it was a well-structured article, and I actually appreciated that the author of it, talked about some of the nuance and the importance of guardrails and all this other stuff. So the right words were in the article, but like usual, I dig into who's the person who's saying this? Oh, what do you know? It's a CEO of an autonomous AI company. So he's definitely got some skin in the game to convince people that AI just doing its own thing on its own, unchecked, is the future. But like I said, he's saying the right things in the article. But this is a real risk that we're moving to, and it ties to all of the things I've talked about leading up to this. And we are moving into the next stage, which is agental AI. So what I do agree with him on is this is where we're going in 2025 and beyond. We are going to move into the age of agents, where now we're going to be in this messy world where we're deciding, is this AI? Is this human? If it's AI, are we even going to have human oversight on it? Or are we just going to let it do its own thing? And I couldn't help, as I was reading this article, think about what Eric Schmidt said in his thing. And actually, he came out on a recent interview where he said, we need to pull the plug. So go back and watch that episode if you want to know where this went. But he just recently came out and said, we've gone too far. And what stuck out, and this is what he was talking about in that part of the interview that he recently did, is he specifically said, when we reach the point where AI is making decisions without a person involved in those decisions, it's making decisions for what it's going to do by itself, we need to be done. We need to be done. Now, his example in the interview I analyzed was specific to like when the large language models start creating releases of itself so fast we can't keep up with the review cycle. But I think even he's starting to reverse engineer this, similar to the example I gave of the succession planning, where it's like you can go, okay, well, we're going to let AI do a bunch of autonomous stuff, and then we're going to have this human in the loop review cycle of the final version before it goes out. There, see, we're keeping humans in the loop. But the problem is, if you've automated 10 quadrillion decisions, septillion decisions up to that point, and now you hand it to a group of humans and go, hey, we got to get this out next week. So can you like make sure we're good? Should be fine. You know, we've done the good thing. We've had all the agents doing its stuff. We've trained all but can you just like make sure we're good? Even saying, well, we did a human checkpoint at the end, it's not enough. And this is where I think even Eric is starting to back down from his original statement of, you know, if just the big frontier models get to that point, even he's starting to back up, which was my critique of it, where I go, I agree that we got to be really careful with this whole autonomous AI. Now, the point that I agree with this founder of Altera, something like that, this autonomous IT company is, are there certain things that we can safely say, yes, they can be automated? It's fine if AI does this. Yes, there are low risk, very repetitive, consistent things that I am not suggesting nothing should ever be, because if you really said nothing should ever be autonomously decided by AI, then AI actually adds no value. Because even as an example, if you have AI help you come up with something, it's like, well, that's not enough, because technically you should be in the loop on every idea it brainstormed or what. And you're like, well, then what would be the point of AI? Like the point is, so I agree there are certain things, but I think we're in such a rush to want to move fast, to automate, to speed things up, to expand, to do all this. I'm just not convinced. Well, I think we're at a point where we could automate, and to this founder's point, could we automate a lot more stuff in 2025 and beyond? Yes. Should we? I don't think we're ready for it. I really don't think. Are there some use cases? Have there been? So here's where it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but hopefully if you've listened or what I'm saying is making sense, I'm really, truly not. There are instances where I have worked with organizations and we have deconstructed the work. We've actually gone through, we've deconstructed it, we've assessed risk, we've identified certain things, and we have intentionally been very intentional about where we've said this kind of stuff is going to be automated. And that makes perfect sense. As part of that automation, though, we have also defined our risk metrics to say, what things are we going to be watching? Because we don't think there's going to be any issues, but how are we going to make sure we revisit that and double check? Because what we think might not be an issue could start creating issues. And if we don't pay attention to it, it could boil up to a point where we're in this instance where we're approving this stuff that's all been automated and we don't even have time and we don't realize something broke further up the supply chain. So not only are we deciding and being intentional where we're doing it, we're also doing a thorough analysis of how are we going to make sure and ongoingly measure to make sure that we made the right decision on that. That, I think, is the key that is not happening. Even where I'm seeing thoughtful analysis, it's like we thoughtfully analyze where we can automate, so we're good. And I'm like, I've been around the block enough to know there are things that you think should be fine that suddenly go, wow, we didn't see that one coming. And so you have to take that additional step. If you do that, I absolutely think there is room to automate. And I think there is more room for us to be automating certain things. And I think it's healthy and good and can be productive and actually make work better for everybody. But we just got to be so careful. And that is not what is happening right now. And that is not where I see things moving. And I have real concerns about it. And that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing and why I'm launching my own practice, to try and help people work through this, because I get it. It's scary. It's overwhelming. And everybody's pressured to be like, we just gotta move. I'm sure we're thinking of it. And so sometimes you need that person who was in the meeting the other week that went, yeah, I get that, but here's what happened last week in this company. So let me tell you, you might want to just rethink this, or maybe we need to put in another safeguard to make sure that doesn't happen in this instance. So we'll see. I agree with the assessment that 2025 and beyond, we're moving into the age of autonomous AI. I don't think we're ready for it. I don't think we've actually even mastered what we have in our hands right now. And I think we're like moving on to the next, which was concerning as I thought about the trajectory of where AI was going. I really was hoping as we stepped into 2025 that we would say, hey, the innovation curve is starting to flatten a bit. We're going to move into wider scale adoption and maturity. And unfortunately, with some of this stuff, whether it's quantum computing, whether it's new energy sources, whether it's different kinds of chips, whether it's autonomous AI, I think we're going to be thrown more stuff that's brand new. And it's just going to add to this pressure and anxiety to just keep going. And I don't think that's in anyone's best interest. So please, if there's nothing else, slow down and be thoughtful and get help if you need. And that's not like a slam. That's not like, oh, you don't know how to do this. Nobody does, which is why we need to slow down and invite other people in and actually think these things through, because we're going to scorch the earth if we don't. Now, that's it. That's all I've got. That's a lot. But what I would encourage you to do is take the next 2 weeks and use some downtime to think seriously about this stuff, because it's coming in 2025. We can do it. We'll manage it. We can figure this stuff out, but we need to be careful and thoughtful. And actually, one of the best steps, and this is why I say take some time to just decompress, is a healthy way that we go through that is actually building intentional time to step back and say, I'm not going to think right now. I'm just going to rest. I'm going to process so I'm energized, I'm refreshed, I'm in a better state to think through these things. And I know that this isn't always the easiest season to do that, because we're running to 9 million events and activities, and before you know it, it's over. So just make sure you're finding some time to rest, relax, and reset before we head into the next year. All right. With that, like I said, this will likely be the last one before next year. So if I don't see you before 2025, have a wonderful holiday season and new year, and we will see you on the other side.